Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Gather round, bookworms, because the time has come for a new episode of Rock and Read. Today, you will get to hear Chapter 15, the next to last chapter of Read by the Red Rocker Sammy Hagar. Chapter 15 is called Custom Ferrari. Here we go. We moved the whole family to Mexico before the 2005 school year started. Our daughters, Kama and Samantha, were each 6 months apart from the daughters of my Cabo Wabo partner, Marco Monroy. We were neighbors in Cabo, and our kids were pals. We wanted to put the girls in school while they were still young enough to learn the language and soak up the culture. Kama was in 4th grade, and her younger sister Samantha, who was 4 years old, was in preschool. After the last year of Van Halen torture, I was ready for the beach. We'd wake up in the morning to the waves crashing outside the window. The weather was fantastic. We had the Cabo Wabo, and we could go down to the cantina and eat or have food delivered to the house. We had people working all over our home. Maids, security, gardeners. Down there, everybody needs a job, and they work hard for the money. Life can be very comfortable. When you go on vacation for 10 days, you spend the first 7 days just getting relaxed. When you go on vacation to stay, you go through periods of boredom, where you break through to new levels of relaxation. You slide all the way down. When we returned after spending most of the year in Mexico, we had changed. It wasn't just our clothes, although Carrie and I noticed when we stopped at the store on the way home that the clothes we were wearing looked a little ragged and dirty back in Marin County. We had reached a place that had a lasting effect. When we returned to the city and got busy again, we now knew where that place was, and it was easier to get back there. During the reunion, I kept the Wabos on full salary. The only gigs we had done all year were my birthday bash at Cabo Wabo and the annual weekend at the new Cabo Wabo Cantina that opened in Harrah's Lake Tahoe in May 2004. Ted Nugent, Toby Keith, and Bob Weir came opening weekend to play with me in the former South Shore Room, the big showcase off the casino where Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra performed. The Lake Tahoe Cantina was part of an expansion plan I had been working on for a while. Several years earlier, Don Maradino, who worked for the Fertitta brothers and the station casinos, approached me about building a Cabo Wabo in Las Vegas. The Fertittas were great. I got to know them pretty well. The Fertittas bought the Ultimate Fighting Championship, a kind of extreme boxing that mixed martial arts and no-holds-barred wrestling with boxing. They booked their first big match at the Trump Arena in Atlantic City, and I went with them. They sent a G4 private jet to pick up first me in San Francisco, then the rest of the party in Vegas. Atlantic City was shut down in a blizzard, and we landed instead in Philadelphia. They put us in big suites at the Ritz-Carlton. We went out to dinner at some fancy Italian place, and they just ordered the entire menu and cases of fine wine. The next morning, we flew into Atlantic City and went to their first fights. Their father started the station casinos. He was the first independent casino operator outside of the Strip. He started small, but eventually ran 11 casinos, making more money than he would on the Strip. I was thinking these guys were the smartest people in Vegas. Marandino came to my house to show me the plans. He wanted to do a Cabo Wabo complex, an 8,000-seat arena, a bowling alley, and the cantina. We were scheduled to break ground in October 2001, but after 9/11, they changed their minds. The contract ran out. Don Marandino went to work first for the Hard Rock Cafe, and then for Steve Wynn to build the Wynn. Mirandino ended up running hurrahs at Lake Tahoe and immediately started plans to open a Cabo Wabo there. He's got friends in the music industry, and he hired them to come and play. He knew how to make a place cool and hip. Most of these old casino guys, they don't know what to do. Where's Sammy and Frank? The good guys are dead. We've got nobody to play here. Mirandino knew there was a whole new breed of people out there. Originally, I only wanted there to be one Cabo Wabo. I hated Planet Hollywood, and when investors behind Planet Hollywood and the Rainforest Cafe came to me to open dozens of cantinas, I sent them away, without even listening to how much money I could make. The original was so special to me. But Mirandino convinced me we didn't have to cookie-cutter them, so we opened the place in Tahoe. We have since also opened in Las Vegas. The Tahoe Cantina comes with this great casino showroom, and my annual Cinco de Mayo run with the Wabos in Tahoe has become a high point on my calendar every year. Tahoe has a new Sammy. I built a brand new studio in Marin County for the Wabos. I told them to make sure they got together and rehearsed at least once a week, but they were in and out of that studio all the time. They stayed tight. After the Van Halen reunion tour, I was so happy to get back with the Wabos. After refreshing my recollection of the pressure on the big-time rock bands, the high ticket prices, the giant production, the big crews, and all that, I was glad to go back to a band that can just go play. If I wanted to bring the band down to Cabo to play for free in the cantina for a week, I did. I took off basically that whole year in Cabo. I wrote my next album, Living It Up, pretty much about everything I was doing. Feet in the sand, living on the coastline, all those songs. I was still recovering from the reunion tour when Irving called to talk to me about Van Halen being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At first, he said something about only the original band getting invited. I went nuts on Irving. I was in the band longer than Roth. He was in Van Halen 7 years. I was with them 11 years. I sold more records than he did. How could they do this to me? We didn't know that the brothers were fooling around with Roth again. Mikey and I were both on the outs. Irving called back and said everything was okay. It probably never was a problem. That's one of the things he does. Makes problems happen so he can make them go away. It was Van Halen, R.E.M., Patti Smith, Grandmaster Flash, and Ronnie Spector. I told Irving that we should all suck it up and make a united showing at the ceremony. He came back with their word. If you're going, they're not going. He said, I thought they were bluffing. Right up until I was standing there giving my speech, I half expected Roth to bust in and do something stupid. Mikey and I wanted to play. Ed and Al pulled the plug at the last minute. Velvet Revolver was set to induct Van Halen. Irving managed them too, which may have something to do with how they landed the assignment. Since Van Halen wasn't going to perform, Velvet Revolver planned a medley of one Dave song and one Sammy song. Roth called up Slash, the Velvet Revolver guitarist, and told him if the band played Jump, Roth would come and sing with them. When Slash said that the band didn't have a keyboard player, Roth told him to put the part on tape. He and Slash got into it. Slash told him they were a rock and roll band, and they played their own instruments, and weren't going to pretend like they had a keyboard player just for Roth. Slash offered to play You Really Got Me or Running with the Devil, but for Roth, it was Jump or nothing. When the Velvet Revolver vocalist Scott Weiland got wind of Roth's phone call, he told Slash he would quit the band if they let that mother anywhere near the stage. By the time I called Slash to suggest that Mikey and I join them for a couple numbers, there was no way that was happening. I called Paul Schaefer, band leader for the event, and he accepted my offer for Mike and me to do Why Can't This Be Love with the house band. No way I was going and not playing. Kitty Chesney insisted on coming with me. Emeril Lagasse flew in. Mike and I were there with our wives, and everybody was giving us so much love. Annie Leibovitz, the photographer, came up and hugged me. Keith Richards' daughter wanted to meet me. "I'll take a picture with you, if you take me and introduce me to your dad," I said. She dragged me over to his table. "Hey, mate, Sammy, good job," he said. I can't tell you how I felt. It was like the first time I felt respected in this business in my life. I did my speech. "I'm sorry the brothers and everybody's not here," I said. "God bless them, but you couldn't have kept me from this with a shotgun." At the end of the evening, they built a jam around Patti Smith and her song, "Power to the People." She is not my kind of gal, and I'm not her kind of guy, but I did record her song, "Free Money," early in my career. Stephen Stills was up there, a little bit gone and stepping on everybody, rolling across them. Eddie Vedder was there, in great form. The REM guys were there. At the end of the jam, I was standing next to Keith Richards. He looked at me and winked. "Good job, Sammy," he said. "Good job, mate. Congratulations." Pretty cool. Still, the Van Halens wouldn't leave me alone. That fall of 2006, I decided to go out with the Wabos and book small theaters, underplay all my best markets, no more than 2 shows in each city, a special treat for my hardcore fans. Irving and I discussed the strategy. He agreed that it would help me stir up excitement, and the music business desperately needed some excitement. Irving thought it would help business the next time through the markets. We booked the whole tour. It was around then we started to hear about another Van Halen reunion with Roth. We didn't believe it would happen. Mikey didn't think so, but he was out, replaced by Eddie's 16-year-old son Wolfie, and out of nowhere, the reunion was on. The label threw together another greatest hits package, all Roth-era tracks. Irving wound up acting as the band's manager for the tour, and he put Van Halen right on top of me. They played the same cities the same week. Either they had just left town or I had just left. It was as if we were on the tour together. We did great anyway, sold out all of our dates, but it was such a chicken move. Obviously, Eddie and Dave made him do it. The fans had waited 100 years for the reunion with Roth, and all the radio stations were talking about it. When I asked him about it, Irving acted like it was no big deal. He told me the same thing he said about the Sam and Dave tour. Let them see how much better you are. When I asked him if he would send the Eagles out on top of Don Henley, he said that would be fine. It would make people talk about Henley. As much as I respect him and as smart as he is, Irving couldn't help himself. He was making a lot more money on that big Van Halen reunion tour than off me playing those theaters. I needed a new manager. I went back with Carter, the guy who had signed me to my first record deal. We had never lost touch, and he had been very successful in the management field since his years at Capitol, most recently at that point with Grammy-winning singer-songwriter Paula Cole. While all these tours were happening, the tequila business had been mostly running itself, but it had grown to the point where I could see it needed some proper management. My accountant took over the business, and he fielded an offer from this big-shot investor, Gary Shansby, who had billions of dollars to spread around, and already owned companies like Johnson's Wax, La Victoria Salsa, and Famous Amos Cookies. Shansby wanted to buy the tequila company for $38 million, but it was a complicated deal. He was only going to pay me half. I would maintain a 50% interest in the business, and after he spent 3 years building up the company, we would split everything after he sold out for $160 million. When I asked him what he would do differently with the company, he said, "Put some feet on the street." My accountant wanted to sell. I didn't. It was one of the worst deals I'd ever seen. If his plan didn't work, and I wanted to buy back the company, he would make me pay some heavy-duty interest on the money he advanced me for the sale. Nothing doing. Shansby hated me for not selling, and started his own tequila brand. I turned around to my accountant, now running the company, and told him to do what Shansby said he was going to do. The accountant hired a marketing person. He hired 6 regional sales guys in the field. He hired a manager to run the salesmen. He opened an office. He spent $4 million on overhead that year. Nothing really happened. In the meantime, as my accountant, he got me into a restaurant deal in San Francisco. He found these 2 other investors, and the 3 of them went to Mexico and met everyone in my plant, making plans to start their own brand. I began to see that there might be a problem. He sat down with me and told me that he and his investors wanted to buy the company from me, and they would pay $22 million. I already turned down Gary Shansby's offer of $38 million. What was this guy thinking? I fired my accountant. He did have a piece of the company. When he sued to get back my shares in his San Francisco restaurant, I made a deal for his end of Cabo Wabo, and he went away. I brought in a liquor business old-timer named Steve Kaufman to run the company. He was somebody I knew, who came from Seagram and had done some work for me as a consultant. He was going through his 4th divorce. The poor. He needed a job. Once he took over, the business exploded overnight. A little more than a year after Kaufman came to work for me, Sky Vodka approached him to buy the company. He took a lunch with an old friend from Sky and showed him the numbers. The guy called me up from the lunch and offered me $70 million for the company. I almost fainted. In the liquor business, we were quiet underachievers. We had 4 employees. I didn't spend any money marketing because we were doing fine, growing at a nice, beautiful, slow pace. The 3-year average net profit was almost $7 million a year. I was happy making that much money. I didn't need any more money. I liked keeping it guerrilla, maintaining control. I went to the Sky offices in San Francisco, very hip company, staffed by lots of young people. I felt at home and wanted to be involved with these guys. I told them maybe I would sell them 50% of the company. I went back and forth for about 10 days, waking up in the middle of the night thinking, oh no, I can't sell this company. I finally told them I couldn't sell. By the time I paid the lawyers, taxes, bought off my partners, I told them all I'd have left is a chunk of money that doesn't really change my life. What amount would change your life? They asked. At least $100 million, I said. They called me back the next day and said, okay. I couldn't even calculate it. What do you do with $100 million? You can't put it in a bank. It was making me more nervous than being broke did. I changed my mind and told them, once again, I couldn't sell the company. That's when Luca Garavaglia, the young dashing chairman of Campari Group and his sidekick with the food stains on his shirt, Stefano Siccardi, a man so relaxed and agreeable, I never realized he was Luca's attorney, showed up in Cabo for my birthday bash. Luca could be the most impressive person I've ever met in my life. He is a brilliant, subtle, and classy human being, elegant and elevated, with an extraordinary command of a wide array of details. He serves on the board of directors for Ferrari. His father died suddenly when Luca was fresh out of university, and he took over the old Italian aperitif makers. He blasted the company into the modern world. He started buying brands like Sky Vodka and took the company public on the Italian stock market. The Campari Group became one of the top liquor companies in the world. Luca and Stefano told me that because they ran a public company, it would be difficult for them to acquire only part interest in the tequila, but they could figure out a way so that I could keep 20% of the company. I was fine. With somebody like Luca Garavaglia owning the company, my 20% was going to be worth more than the 100% had been. Luca was the clincher. In May 2007, I made the sale. I took my whole family on vacation to Italy for 6 weeks, even my brother and his family. We stayed for a week at the winery the Campari people owned in Sardinia, one of the coolest places on the planet. We went from Sardinia to southern Italy, up the Amalfi coast, through Tuscany and Chianti, all the way to Lake Maggiore in northern Italy. After a week by the lake, we went to Milan to visit Luca. He showed me the new $100 million Campari factory. Only about 5 people were running the whole place, with these efficient new machines that wrap and seal 2,500 cases of Campari in like 2 minutes. He gave me some amazing numbers, $15,000 a second or something like that, but he wasn't bragging. He was just showing me. 20 years ago, they probably had 6,000 employees. Now they had a dozen, most in the office. "You ride with me," he said as we left the factory. "Let's keep talking." We got into his Maserati, which is not that great of a car. There were 2 guys with him. We got in the back. The other 2 guys sat in the front. They looked around, started it up, and punched it. In no time, they were hauling ass 140 miles an hour down the freeway. I felt every bump, and I couldn't roll down the window. We were hot. The air conditioning was not working too well. "I don't like this car very much," Lucas said. "I like a Mercedes, but I'm on the board of directors for Ferrari, and they wanted me to drive one of their cars. The Maserati is the only 4-seater. The Ferrari, it's not right for me. No 4 doors. We got back to the office and went through a metal detector. The 2 other guys pulled out the guns they were wearing in shoulder holsters. Nobody blinked an eye. Lucas' car rode so badly because it was carrying 1,600 kilos of bulletproofing. A couple years later, I started reading about the new Ferrari 599 Fiorano. Ferrari enthusiasts were comparing this to the greatest of the Ferraris, the 275 GTB, the first Testarossas. I hadn't bought a new Ferrari in a long time. I decided to buy one. I went to the Ferrari dealer and the salesman took my order. When we were finished, he tells me it'll be a 2.5-year wait and a $300,000 premium above the sticker price. I called Luca. "It's so funny you called me," he said. "There's a board meeting on Monday. I'll see what I can do. What exactly do you want?" That Monday night, I received an email from Luca with a letter from the CEO of Ferrari attached for the dealership. I got my car in 2.5 months, and I paid sticker price. Ferrari even gave me a custom paint job, black with a red stripe. They reversed the color on the interior, red interior with black stitching. They put in a plaque that said, "This Fiorano made for Sammy Hagar," and delivered it on my birthday. On every other Ferrari, the symbol is always a black horse on a yellow background. They made mine red. Life was good for a kid from the Orange Groves. I had wealth and fame. I was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I am blessed with a wonderful wife, great children, and a loving family. I had experienced success in every realm of my life. It had been a long road to Cabo. I went back to Fontana in February 2007 to play I Can't Drive 55 at the NASCAR track they built on the side of the old Kaiser steel plant. The stage stood where my father used to work at the open hearth. Families were everywhere. I got a huge ovation, bigger than the Hollywood celebrities there, whose names I couldn't remember the next day. I took Carrie and the girls, and we spent 3 days with my mother at her place in Palm Desert. After Mike died, she sold the farm. I bought them and moved to a condo in Palm Desert near my sister Velma. My mom would have rather found a $5 bill walking down the street, or pick up 10 cans and cash them in for $20 than have me give her $1 million. She wanted to win the lottery or a jackpot. She didn't want anybody to give her anything. I finally talked her into letting me buy her a house. She loved her condo. She furnished it and remodeled it, but this really nice house came up across the street from Velma. It belonged to one of the executives for Outback Steakhouse, who had been transferred to Florida. She loved it. We held big events there every year. She would cook up giant dinners for Easter or Thanksgiving, and we would surround her with family. There was an extra bedroom for me and Carrie. We kept some of our stuff there. I had a guitar there. She came to stay with us too. She had her first heart attack at 4 in the morning while she was visiting. She finally confessed that she couldn't breathe, and we took her to the hospital. They put 2 stents in her, but she had another heart attack a year later. She went under the knife for quadruple bypass surgery at age 80. I was scared. I thought she was going to die. But she volunteered for the operation, and she came out of it great. When we stayed with her before the NASCAR event, she seemed tired. My mom was always a ball of energy, but she was sitting a lot. She stayed up late the night before we left, talking with me. My mom always kept a garden. She saved seeds and was careful to rotate her crops in their little plots. She knew all this stuff. You can't just take carrot seeds and plant them the next year, she said. It has to be the third year. She talked about how peach seeds had to be wrapped with cotton and left in a jar with water all winter before they would sprout. She told me you have to plant carrots in a spot one year, and the next year you put lettuce in that spot, and then the next year you leave it alone, and then you come back with tomatoes. She told me all these wonderful things about canning. I got up the next morning, went and did the NASCAR gig for my father, and went home. 2 days later, she died. My sister called at about 6 in the morning. She was putting Mom in an ambulance. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. She was dead. She didn't have a heart attack. Her heart simply stopped beating. She was done, and she just slipped away quietly. A beautiful finish, my sister Bobby wrote. I miss her every day. Well, that's the end of Chapter 15. Let me know what you thought of Chapter 15 in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.